Welcome back, everybody. We have got a great session ahead. Vienna IBA demonstration projects as an instigator for facilitating change and social value in the housing sector. Once again, if you want to be live posting, use the hashtags hashtag Housing Assembly 2021, hashtag affordable housing, and hashtag social value of housing. Of course, the chat and the questions are up there on the right-hand side. Please share any resources, share your comments, your thoughts, and put some questions in the Q&A box. And if you missed the graphic illustration just as we went to the break for that last session, it will be posted on the website tomorrow. Zara, our graphic illustrator, has been doing a tremendous job really capturing beautifully the concepts and the ideas that we've been chatting about today. But I know that there's a great deal of excitement and anticipation about this particular session, so I'm not going to say anything more. I'm going to let Alan Pert, Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Architecture, Building and Planning at the University of Melbourne, lead us through this next session. Over to you, Alan.
Thanks, Karen, and welcome back, everyone. And what an incredible first day for the symposium. There's been some incredible conversations going on, and we've heard from colleagues all across Australia throughout the day. But we also heard from New York, the Saskia Assassin, we've heard from Toronto, we've also heard from Singapore, and Flora, who was over in Wales. But what better way to translate much of what we've heard today about the social value of affordable housing than to turn our attention to the city of Vienna with its incredible 100-year legacy of public housing. Now, Vienna is a city where more than 60% of residents live in approximately 440,000 social homes, about half owned directly by the municipal government and the rest by state-subsidised not-for-profit cooperatives. Statistics some of us can only dream about. Now, we are joined live tonight by Kurt Hofstetter, who is leading the International Building Exposition, commonly referred to as Ipa Vienna, or IBA for some of us, which was launched back in February 2016 and will be completed in the fall of 2022. Now, Kurt is a graduate of the University of Natural Resources and Applied Life Sciences in Vienna. As an employee of the city of Vienna, during the last 30 years, he has been involved in various leadership functions concerning urban development, city planning, zoning, and landscape planning for the city of Vienna. Now, from 2003 to 2015, he was significantly involved in the urban development of the urban lakeside in Vienna. Currently, he is acting as head of the International Building Exposition with the theme of new social housing, and the principle that each and every Viennese resident is to be able to benefit from the fundamental right to an affordable home. Now, IBAs serve as an important space for experimentation, as urban development labs and prototypes of new ways of living. IBAs should, as such, be understood as temporary laboratories, as areas of both spatial and intellectual experimentation, which would seem relevant for the discussion with Homes Victoria, whose objective is to generate internationally effective contributions to new social housing. Now, I've had a particular personal interest in the Ipa model since living in Berlin for a few years in the early 1990s. Ipa Berlin in 1987, for instance, was a turning point for the city. Many would argue that the Ipa saved Berlin from the wrecking ball or urban renewal. Avoiding the mistakes made in Britain with new towns, planners in Berlin made an abrupt U-turn after considering constructing a new motorway through the heart of the city, and after receiving incredible pushback from local communities, they, instead of tearing down and replacing the old city, they started to repair and revitalise. Berlin city planners launched Ipa with the ambitious goal of solving all of their previous planning failures, and the focus was to be on housing. And one key concept developed by German architect Joseph Paul Kleihaus for Ipa 1987 was critical reconstruction. This was a radical notion at the time. The Ipa tapped into the DIY energy of the squatter movement by fixing old buildings, then handing them over to the residents. It also kick-started the careers of a new generation of architects who rejected abstract forms of modernism. And so we have an opportunity tonight to understand how Vienna has adopted and shaped their own agenda through the Ipa model. And with plans to stage our own Ipa here in Melbourne in the coming years, we are delighted to welcome Kurt Hofstetter. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Alan, for this very nice introduction, and also thank you for the invitation to your housing assembly. that's very good to be able to share what we are doing here in Austria. It's not even European. You could say Austria or Vienna has a special role, but I will talk to that about later. And I will also present to you what is Ipa Vienna doing during these years from 2016 until 2022. So you can see here the two main topics I would like to present here. It's the system of social housing in Vienna. So you have a chance to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. It needs to get some framework knowledge about this. And then the second part is some examples of Ipa projects and processes, and to show how they can be drivers for change and social added value in the housing sector. So I would like to start with the initial situation, the housing system in Vienna. And as you can see on the slide, it's just a few pictures and examples that there is a long history of social housing in this city, more than 100 years. So if you go back to the red Vienna on the top left, or you can see the Werkbund Vienna in the 30s that was very abruptly stopped by Austro-fascism in 1934, but it was also a chance for those architects then to, when they had to leave the country, they mostly went to America and some even to Australia, as Harry Seidler did, for example. Then we have, after the war, this top right, Alt Erla, the huge buildings where we really had a lot of mass production for social housing, at the same time starting to do the gentle urban renewal. And up to now, we are coming to the passive house units or to Seestadt Aspern, which is the last bigger development that's well known. If you can see on the next slide, I will present, if you can go to the next slide, please. We don't see it now. There are objectives for an active housing policy, and it's three main factors. So yes, thank you, Olivia. There are three main topics I would like to present and that are important to understand how this whole system of social housing in Vienna is working. First one is the implementation of an inclusive housing policy and building up a social housing community in the city with a lot of different institutions. The second one is strengthening the non-profit sector and ensuring sustainable funding. And the third part is a prospective land policy and fostering innovation and quality. So we go to the first part. It's very important when we talk about social housing, there are so many different ideas about what it could be. So in Vienna, when we talk about social, we do not mean talking about the poorest of the poor or the most vulnerable ones. We are talking about societal housing, living together. So that is why almost 80% of all the Viennese people have access to social housing. It's connected to income, of course, but it's very important to understand that it's not only for people who have not enough money, it's really for the majority of people. And as you can see, just as an example, the maximum net income after taxes per year is 47,000 euros for one person, and then it goes up depending on how big your family is, which is quite a lot. And this is why you have a very good mixture of people even in districts, but also within a house, and we try to avoid gentrification by this. As you can see in the next slide, the second part is strengthening the non-profit sector and ensuring sustainable funding. As Alan said already in the introduction, we have quite a big stock of housing units in the property of the municipality. So in total, it's about 1 million housing units in Vienna. 75% is rental homes. So Vienna is not a city of ownership so much as many other cities are. We have the rental system very widely spread, and a lot of it is owned by the municipality. You can see that the owner-occupied homes are only about 20%. And if you go further, you can see the principal residence units, so people who are really living in Vienna as the principal residents. And also it's about rental homes, 75%. You can see that very nicely here. Within the rental homes, we have 300,000 privately owned. The 210,000 are really owned by the municipality, and the rest, 185,000 units, is owned by low-profit housing associations, and I will talk about that in the next slide. This means it's limited profit housing associations. They can have some profit, but it's a maximum of 3.5% interest rate on their own capital, which means they can make profit, but they have to reinvest it. They cannot take it out. They have to offer cost-limited rents, and this system makes it possible to guarantee a very low level of rents for the people who need housing then. We have 60 companies, 60 LPHAs only in the city of Vienna. So to understand the finance model of subsidized housing in this city, this is numbers from 2019. It's about 500 million per year expenditures and revenues. So how do we expend the money? It's more than 80% going into object funding. This is very important to understand, that we're not just supporting people who do not have enough money for their rents, for example. This is still 18%. So everybody has access to the social housing, and 18% needs special support for that. But 82% is going into the erection of new houses or into the redevelopment. And by doing so, we're making sure that the money does not go through the renter to the investor, which would be taking public money into the private sector. But if we funding the houses, the money stays in the building. And this is a way to make sure that we don't have speculation, or we can reduce speculation very intensely. The revenue part, so where does the money come from? It's 45% is repayment from long-term loans, and 55% is housing subsidy from federal funds. More or less, this is covering the expenses. Long-term loans in this case means 35 years or longer even. And as the system is running for such a long time, this is working. If you want to start a system like this from the beginning, then you never have repayment, because it takes such a long time until repayment starts. This is a main factor. And this is why it works in Vienna, and it could easily be cut anytime. So if you go further to the third big package, that's important. This is working on prospective land policy and also fostering innovation and quality. So land policy means we have a Wohn for Wien, it's called Wohnfonds, an enterprise that's owned by the city, existing for more than 35 years now, and they have the task to buy land as soon as it is available for low price and keep it for a long time until it's needed. This has been working very well in the past. It's now getting very difficult because you do not get new land for a price that would be possible within subsidized housing. And therefore, on the next slide, you can see that we have implemented a new zoning category within the city of Vienna 2 years ago, which is called subsidized housing. It's very radical because it regulates the price of the land in case you get permit to build housing for the first time on a special area in the city. So if there's a new zoning plan and you are allowed to erect houses for the first time in this area, so maybe brownfields or whatever, then you have to give 2/3 of the residential floor space to subsidized housing for a fixed price of 180 euros per square meter. This is extremely low because the market price is more than 10 times higher. So we have situations where within this 2/3 of a whole development, you have these houses with very low price, and the neighborhood house maybe that is on the free market costs more than 10 times the same. But this is the only way we can still make sure that the price is not just going completely through the ceilings, and in fact nobody would be able to live in these houses anymore because they are more or less just built for investors. So the subsidy allocation by competition on quality is very important. We have Wohn for Wien is not just buying the land and making it available to these limited profit housing associations, but they are also making sure that the developments are meeting some qualities and that competitions are done. So we have developer competitions for units with more than 500 housing units, for developments with more than 500, and owned by the city of Vienna or Wohn for Wien. And then there is a land advisory board for smaller developments, where is also some quality assessment going on. So what we call the Vienna Model is quite well known worldwide. It has 4 pillars, and this is what we're doing in these competitions. So these are the qualities of social sustainability, of architecture, of economy, and ecology, which includes technical issues like heating systems and things like that. And these 4 pillars are the pillars of the Vienna model of making sure that in subsidized housing we have quite high quality in the end. You can see that if you come to Vienna and you look at those houses, they have usually much higher quality than the houses on the free market, of course, because there was a competition, because somebody's looking at it, although it's much more easier to access them and much cheaper than the private market. So that was an introduction to the system of Vienna, so just that you have a chance to understand in which framework we are working and what we're doing. The motivation, what is Ipa Vienna and what does it aim for? Ipa means International Building Exhibition. I made an A here because in German it's Ausstellung, so that's why it's Ipa and not EB. International means that there is an Ipa network. There are currently several Ipas running in Europe at the same time, but not only in Europe. As you know, Melbourne has joined this Ipa family. There is an Ipa idea for Africa, and there are some others in the world that are trying to use this very special tool that allows to leave your very well known, very much used systems and put your head out, create a situation of laboratory and to try something, even if you don't know for sure that this will work. This is the very special circumstances that Ipa allows, and that is why so many regions and cities are now trying to get this energy and to invite their local partners to do a step further. So it's about building as well. The B is for building, which means we're not just planning, we're building. And in the last one, the exhibition is that the built projects will be shown. Where is Ipa Vienna now? You can see the time line here from 2016. And we're almost in 2022, where we will start to present the results of this process. So next year, starting in June 2022, over a period of 5 months, we will have an exhibition, we will have events, we will present the built areas, the neighborhoods, and have a lot of guided tours. It would be great if anybody had a time to come to Vienna at this time, then this is really an opportunity to get a lot of information about what we have been doing. So to the projects, Ipa always lives a lot because of the projects and processes. And the projects, in fact, are the drivers for change. So if you have, you can get an overview over the locations of Ipa Vienna. You can see this is all of the city of Vienna, and we have a lot of projects quite widely spread. There is 9 neighborhoods. These are the bigger dots here, and 15 single projects. In total, it's more than 120 projects, because in the neighborhoods, usually you have 10 to up to 20 projects in one neighborhood. So I start with neighborhood development as a key driver in my next slides. Why are we talking about neighborhood? The next picture will show you Am Seebogen as an example. We found out that neighborhood development is the key factor for all the other goals we try to achieve, because we can meet all the major topics like mobility, like short distances, like social interactivity, and ground floor management. And all these topics are coming together. And if we really focus on developing neighborhoods from the beginning of the urban development scratch, of the first planning phase, then we can make sure that as soon as the houses are built and finished and people can move in or start to work there, most of the infrastructure and social infrastructure, working infrastructure is there, and it works from the beginning. This is extremely important. So we chose the next phase of Am Seebogen here. Am Seebogen is part of Aspern-Seestadt, and some of you might have heard about it. It's quite a big development. Will be finished maybe 2032, 35, we don't know exactly. And now no, we're not so far yet. We are already have living there about 8,000 people, and in the end it will be 24,000 people living there, 20,000 working. So it's quite something. And what we're trying to do is to to bring together the ideas that are coming from the developer competitions, bring them together, and then have working groups with all the developers for a long time and very intensely, to make sure that not everybody has the idea to make a coffee, or not everybody tries to have working space and to rent out, things like this, just to make sure that it's a very nice range of different offers that make sense and that are well coordinated from the beginning. And it also means that we need to bring in new players, because these limited profit housing associations, of course, have a lot of expertise in building and running houses with residential focus, but they do not have the expertise when it goes to the ground floor zone, and to really making sure that that you have the right players to offer offices, to have very small units. They would like to have a big unit with 700 square meters with a supermarket, and that's it. But what we can see now, people need very small units, 20 square meters, 25, startups, single entrepreneurs, who really make the difference in a neighborhood and make it lively and vivid, but they usually don't find the circumstances they need. So in the next example, Sonnenwendviertel, this is very close to the new main railway station in Vienna. And this is an interesting experiment. It's really what Ipa should be like, because we didn't know how it would work out in the beginning. Mostly privately financed, but with special tasks. So they only got the land with a side letter, and they all these investors had to fulfill a promise they made in the beginning concerning the ground floor use. In the end, there was an idea of supporting the ground floor by very cheap rents, up to only 4 euros per square meter net, which is extremely low, and to refinance it through privately financed housing above, which is only a few cents per square meter in the housing areas above. That makes sure that you have an extremely interesting and dense and vivid situation of small shops, offices, and startups in the ground floor. And it makes a completely difference. If you go through it now, you can see this is really lively. This is what we would like to have in these new neighborhoods. And we are now, as it's finished, it's already finished, we are trying to look at it and see what can we learn for future developments in this city out of this. The next topic is, of course, affordability and new types of housing. So one example is Wolfganggasse. It's a smaller development, only 1,100 housing units, mainly subsidized. And the focus here was demand-oriented offers for single parents. We could see also, it's true for many cities, of course, but also in Vienna, that we have more and more single parents, and they are very often on the edge of falling into poverty, because they cannot really have a proper job. They have to take care for children. Sometimes they have to work from home. And usually they need a lot of support by parents, friends, and others. So it's not visible really that they are on the edge of falling into poverty. But the numbers, when you look at it and you make research, numbers show that this is the case. That was the reason why in the city of Vienna we decided to really focus on special offers for single parents, and Wolfganggasse was the first one to do so. Meanwhile, this went through other developments in the city, and together with the pandemic COVID crisis, we could see that the outcome of this focus on special offers for single parents is more flexible units. And this is also exactly what we need, and everybody saw that we needed in the COVID time, when suddenly you have to work from home, when your children suddenly are at home and studying at home, and when you don't have enough rooms or enough space, and you need to create maybe extra sheltered, extra spaces where more people can work and do their stuff at home. So this kind of flexibility in the housing units is very helpful for single parents, but it was understood only by the main group of people in society by having the experience through COVID. This was an interesting factor. Some of the solitary projects that have to do with affordability are these two. It's Home 21 and Port. In 2015, when there was a very strong refuge wave going through Europe and also through Austria, Vienna made the decision to offer immediate housing with just for a limited time, so where people can only stay for maximum 10 years, and also the permit for living in these houses would only stay for 10 years. So this was an experiment to find out how could we work with this immediate housing, because on one side we are really trying to avoid limited housing and limited contracts. On the other side, we could see that people who are in difficult situations and do not even have access to the social housing program because they have to prove that they're living for 2 years in the city before, they need something else, and this was trying to find out what it could be. The two houses are completely different. Home 21, for example, decided to have a very open construction in serial production. So this house does not really care about its use. It could be office, it could be living, housing, it could be production. It can also contain cars, as you can see, but this could easily be changed into a ground floor zone with shops and offices and things like that. So it was really reduced and did not focus on housing, but it focused on serial production and on very limited just planning situation. The other one, Port, is a modular timber construction with limited building permit. So whereas the first one, Home 21, can just stay after 10 years when housing is not allowed anymore, they will find something else and do something else with the house. Port, the timber construction, is really built to take it away and build it somewhere else for 2 more times in a period of 40 years. So we are now in the time of 5 years. We're now starting to think about where would be the next place to erect it and to start from new. In both cases, we can see that there is mainly people who did not have access to the social housing system in Vienna yet, but they got a chance to gain this access, and now they have a possibility to just move into one of the other many subsidized housings that were built or are offered in the city. So it's really a transition place for people who are coming to the city, start here, and then decide to stay and get a chance and the permit to go into the social housing system. Of course, a big topic is climate adaptation and sustainability. We know that this is, well, we're just in the time of the COP26 in Glasgow, so everybody is really aware of how important it is. But to be honest, what we are building is still not meeting these goals that are just being developed and just settle in the consciousness of society, really, and also of the politicians. What we did here in Biotop City is a very dense development. It's 11 stores and even more sometimes, that is combined and should show that you can build very densely, but also green and sustainable. So we call this little brochure Hidden Treasures because there is a big amount of measures built into this whole development that you would not be able to see when it's finished. The impulse was done by Harry Glück and Helga Fassbinder. Helga Fassbinder is leading the Biotop City Association in the Netherlands, and the planning procedure made it necessary that all the partners that are working together there from the beginning made a team, and then they had I think 30 different ideas of the urban situation, urban planning, how this could be located. A very important factor was how is the wind going through, how is the rain situation. In the end, there was a modulation that's called Green Pass that is really helpful and used a lot in Vienna now. With this computer system, you can check on the level of the first sketch on an urban development which measures of cooling down will be working, and which ones are just looking nice but will not work. So this is a very elaborate system, and has led in the end to this result that's now already been finished for a few months. It has the sponge city inside. It has a lot of water management. It has a lot of greenery inside, also outside, and it involves the residents in the maintenance of the green facade greenings, because they are implemented in the balconies, for example, and so it needs a lot of interaction with the people. We could see that many things that have been developed in this Biotop City then also went into other developments, because there is just knowledge created that is quickly then coming into other areas. If you go to the next slide, you can see the Green Pass modulation. So on the left side, this is a thermal picture of the whole development without greenery. On the right side, it's the optimum, and the middle is what was really made in the end. And the goal is to reduce the air that's going into this area about 2 degrees Celsius when it's going out. This is what will be now researched. If it's really working, what is working, what needs to be changed, so that we also can use it, improve it, and use it then for other developments in the city. So this is climate adaptation, of course. Quartier an der Schanze is a new development where we could see that many things that have been developed in Biotop City before are now implemented in other developer competitions. And this is also very nice to see that the learning rate is extremely high. From one competition to the other, you can see improvements. And this is, for me, it was surprising that it's really working so well and so quickly. But on the other hand, it's exactly what we need. Again, the Green Pass modulation is part of this development here. And of course, it was also, again, the 4 pillar qualities of sustainability, as I presented before. Then we have solitary projects that are working with circular management, with CO2 reduction, like top left, Waldrebengassen. This is a cooperation with Vancouver we are having since a few years, because Vancouver decided to implement social housing in their city and had contact with Vienna, I don't know, since 4 or 5 years, very intensely, always to find out how could we implement this system to be able to keep people in the city that we need to run the city, like nurses, like policemen, fire workers, and all these people who are not able to live in the city anymore because it's getting so expensive. This is the reason to implement social housing in Vancouver. And now we have a very interesting cooperation. There is a Vienna house being built in Vancouver, and there's a Vancouver house being built in Vienna, which is Waldlebengasse, you can see here. It's a timber construction with 100% renewable energy and subsidized. So in this combination, this is the first time for Vienna we're doing this. And this is also a laboratory situation. So we really want to get knowledge and to see how we can work in the future. One extra step now already has been that Vienna has laid out a new program of timber construction, and with every new developer competition, we have at least one building in timber construction, which also helps the industry to get fit for that. Because in fact, if we would suddenly change into timber construction, the industry wouldn't be able to cope with that. So it needs some time to really work together. It's very interesting that the schools also changed into sustainable energy systems. This is why they are in, and other projects like Houseful, who is doing a lot with circular management. They have 11 circles they developed and are now building it into a new house to more show people how it works, because we can see, and this is part of the way these projects are working. Usually there is one investor or one company that are really trying to do something new, and all the others are like watching, waiting and see, does it work? And in the end, if it works, then suddenly it's easy to roll it out and to make it just standard. And that is why Ipa is working as a platform to make visible what others are doing, where they succeeded, why they succeeded, and also why they did not succeed, maybe, because also learning from failures is extremely important. And then this next step is to invite the others and implement. Like in this project, this is very small measures for the densely built city, Wilhelminian areas, more than 100 years old, with small pavements. And this is a system where you can have facade greenery in these very small lanes and old areas of Vienna. Top left is also just a small intervention. It's Moogly, a container that goes through the city, so people can really go to it, look at it, how facade greenery is working, with different styles, with different plants you can use, just to take away fear or special ideas they have without knowing. So this is more working with the population and of course with the investors as well. And then we have urban renewal and refurbishment. Of course, when we can, on the next slide, you can see Per Albin Hansen settlement. It's huge, 16,000 people living there, stemming from the 1960s and 1970s. So you can see that there's a lot of elderly people living there. And after having refurbished more or less all the stock of the Wilhelminian area, Gründerzeit in Vienna, we now need to go into the big developments that were erected after the war. And Per Albin Hansen settlement, therefore, is an example where we try to first get people in and to just to explain what's happening in their area with its exhibitions. You can see in this walking path through, like in the 1970s style, people were invited to bring in their own pictures, their own stories. There was also a book made, just to make sure that they understand now we're doing something in your settlement, and this was the first step. In the next slide, you then can see the plan for the whole area with a lot of different measures, and to just update this whole settlement. There's a lot of effort in, because it's all owned by the city of Vienna. It's the one part of the houses that are owned by the city, and the city would like to learn from this very project and from the possibilities that come up, to then enroll it over all the other huge and massive buildings that are stemming from this time. There are some solitary projects as well in the next slide that are working with this densely built area that's about 150 years old. And in this case, all three of them are showing that private investors also can contribute to the topics of social housing if they are deciding to do, and they're not getting poor. They're also doing their job, and they're earning the money, but they take some responsibility. And this is why we show what they are doing as an example for other private investors, how you could take social responsibility and just within your private companies. The mixed block, for example, one back again. The mixed block was one example where the investor has taken a period of more than 1 year to work with all the residents in the house, make sure that after the old house was broken down, it needed to be broken down, and the new one is built, they still find a situation they can afford to stay in their old area. The last one, it's called Apple Tree. For example, an investor has bought 7 houses in a block and is building the whole block now, opening it up inside and building it to a new neighborhood, making a very interesting new neighborhood out of this block that usually is inside, it's completely closed. You have walls everywhere and you wouldn't be able to walk through. Now this will be a very nice neighborhood, partly subsidized, partly privately financed, and very interesting development. So while coming to a conclusion about Ipa Vienna, the next slide, is it fit and affordable for tomorrow? We have a system that's called smart housing. It's very close to the units that are offered by the city, which means you have an equity of maximal 60 euros per square meter to pay when you go in. This is part of the system. Maybe I didn't explain it in the beginning. In the subsidized housing system, you pay some money in the beginning to support the buying of the land and the erection of the house. When you leave the flat, you get that money back and somebody else is coming in and pays it again. So this is part of this system. And in the smart housing, it's a very small amount. It's only maximum 60 euros per square meter. In others, it's up to 500 euros per square meter. And there's a rent of 7.5 euros per square meter. This is a level that's limited. Then, as I said again, we have special offers for single and separated parents. That leads to a lot of flexible floor plans, which is extremely important in the long-term view. The strong focus on neighborhood development, which creates a lot of synergies, cooperations, new agents for the ground floor zone. The new focus on sustainability, dense and green, CO2 reduction. If we would start Ipa Vienna now, this would be the main factor. It has not been when we started in 2013, in fact. So think about it. Then it was the new social housing, but now we would really focus on CO2 reduction and on climate change and shoots protection. The new category for zoning plans is very important. We have not so much experience yet. It's only valid for 2 years, and we can see that some huge developments are working quite well with this. We don't know so much about the single privately financed projects. They are still waiting. Then there is the focus of the object funding to avoid speculation, and in general, the topics of inclusiveness also to avoid segregation. So that's the overview of the system of Vienna and what we're doing in Ipa. So I just want to give you a few examples in the next slide about available documents. Also on our website, the main publications are there for download, some even also in English, not all of them, because it's a very German-driven process. And next year, to finish, is the final presentation starting on June 22nd to November 18, where you can have an impression of all these projects, guided tours, presentations, and it would be very nice to see some of you in Vienna in this time and to host you, maybe offer a special guided tour. So thank you. This is my presentation. I'm very happy to discuss any questions and be open for that.
Fantastic, Kurt. Quite incredible. I think just not only the history of what's happened in Vienna with public housing, but incredible just to see what's happened over the last few years in terms of the Ipa work. And I think huge lessons for a lot of us in terms of how policy and planning in particular, incentives, even the tax system, importantly the role of social sustainability and design and architecture, economics and ecology all come together and play out. Now, as Kurt said, for anyone listening in, there is an opportunity to ask questions. One of the things I think you've probably answered quite a bit of this, Kurt. For me, I suppose knowing the history of Ipa and knowing the success of it, and seeing that in the Berlin context, how it can transform a place, I think it's probably obvious why people would like to adopt the model. And in particular, we've been really keen to look at it in a Melbourne context. But I suppose that it does raise the question of why did Vienna see the need for Ipa, given the strength of what was already there? You talked about the international partnerships and networks, but I think for me, it's maybe the publicness of what you're doing. It strikes me that Ipa is an opportunity to really engage the citizens of Vienna in change, in architecture and construction, and policy and planning, that built infrastructure that we see, the kind of visualizing policy and economics coming through. Is that one of the opportunities? Is that publicness a really important part of it?
Yes. So there are different questions. Publicness, of course, is a very important part. And we have also in this whole system of institutions around social housing, there's really a lot of different institutions. We also have quite some that are working with the public on a regular basis, like we call it Gebietsbetreuung. It's like a neighborhood management, and they are spreading in different areas of the city, usually in the old built parts, but since a few years also in new developments where they help people to just come along when they just move in to create neighborhoods, to create friendships, to find out what is offered in this area, and also to focus on this, like not just buy local, work local, support each other, so that it's easier for startups, for shops to really be there in the beginning, because they can be sure that people are really coming and supporting each other. That is an interesting part of it. Why Vienna chose the Ipa? It's an interesting question, because we know we chose the topic where we are strong, as Ipa Heidelberg, by the way, also did. they are also presenting their final results this year. They focused on research, being a university city. And Vienna decided to focus on social housing, because if we are strong in a topic and very strong and have a unique position, it's very easy to get lazy, and it's very easy to get too used to what's working. But the world is changing so quickly, so you have to be alert all the time, and you have to always just stand up and do something new and find out how can you react to this new development, to this new movement that's coming in maybe from the US or from whatever. And therefore it was interesting to see, as soon as we started Ipa Vienna, there was a movement through the planners community in the city, and say, okay, good, let's do that. And suddenly there were new ideas and a lot of energy, and you could see how much energy is there in the city. But some of it is kind of bound by, everybody knows what will be the next step. You know the system so well that some people say, okay, I just leave them. I don't even engage in this anymore. And suddenly, if you open the door and say, now there is a situation where you can be experimenting and bringing in your ideas, because exactly we need what you're thinking should be different, then this suddenly opens the doors and brings in new ideas. And the city has the chance to look at it, to work with it, and implement what is working. And that is really a big step now for us.
And Kurt, just to kind of extend that, I mean, in terms of what Ipa looks like on the ground, I understand there's 3 levels of project that you would look at and consider in terms of investment. So a developer or team would come to the city with a proposal, and you would evaluate that. You would have a panel, and this probably touches on Carolina's question about how the jury panel or selection process works. So there's certain criteria that a building or a project has to meet to qualify for an Ipa. And the other question to that is, does it become public? Can the public then go and visit this and see it as a live exhibition and demonstration project?
We had an international panel for Ipa projects, and whatever project was sent to us, we did a just first overview and the first selection, and then the most interesting ones were then discussed in this international panel. And then there was, before that, of course, we had criteria that were published, and with this criteria we could see, okay, is this project, does it promise to really be a next step? Has it the potential? Do the developers even have the know-how or the right people to implement it, or is it just a plan and just an idea? Maybe could we help them to find somebody, an investor or a partner? Sometimes we were jumping in with studies where we could see there is just some knowledge missing, and the investors usually they don't have that in their portfolio to do this kind of thing, or not even have the knowledge. So we bring them together with the university and say, oh, look at this. And then we could get maybe to the next step and really make it a project, because your idea is good, but something is missing, and things like that. So this was done in the international board, and the results now are really, they got a stamp. It's like Ipa candidate, you are a candidate. That was also published very soon. It has 2 functions. One is just to show, oh, I'm part of Ipa, and one is to be a little uncomfortable in the back, because you have promised something publicly, and then you have to stick to it. And one project from Biotop City I showed with a high density development with a lot of green measures, they wouldn't have made it without the Ipa stamp, because when it suddenly got difficult and the building prices went up, and the usual reaction is, okay, let's drop this and let's drop that and just make what we always do. But with the Ipa mark, kind of, we promised something. They had to meet again and again that we have to find a solution. We can do it. And they did. And this is the real big knowledge we can now gain, because next time they don't have to do all this very intense process. They know what it needs just to land there and be very quick and not so exhausting.
That's interesting. I mean, I was going to come on to the question about research. I mean, you mentioned research in the context of Heidelberg, but obviously speaking with my academic hat on, I think it sounds interesting that you're actually acting as a bit of a broker for research partnerships with developers and projects in the universities. And I mean, that cropped up in earlier conversations today in the symposium, the role of post-occupancy evaluation. And looking towards next year and the end, if you like, of that 6-year programme, is there any plans for post-occupancy evaluation, or will there be any monitoring going forward?
Yeah, that's not really fixed yet, I have to say, because the Ipa is limited from 2016 to 2022. This is the time we have, and this is the time that's financed. I am fighting for more time afterwards. That's still a process that's going on, because we need to have the same team to look at what has come out and to do evaluation with other partners, of course, but to really make the results accessible, to really make the results accessible for others. It needs some time, and it needs evaluation, it needs more precise looking at them, and also very critical. So what we're doing now is an analysis of how the Ipa worked with the partners, and also with some external experts who look at it from outside, to have a good base and to know what should we take into the future, and then think about where could we just locate it in the city, into the administration. Where is it best to locate it? This process is now just running and will be finished when we are doing the final presentation.
Great. And look, I'm going to turn to the questions, and I've got a question from actually from Leanne Kaur, who's from Monash University and one of our Ipa members in Ipa Melbourne. And Leanne's asking about the importance of neighbourhood design and development to support diverse housing models. How much appetite do you find stakeholders have to become involved, and how do you assemble and bring them along? And then there's a final question, and how important is ownership in the equation? Some of the projects you mentioned are on public land.
Yeah, well, they're hanging together, because you need some access, some possibility just to develop power in the process, in the planning process. And if you give up the power too soon, then it's gone. We know that it's everywhere, it's the same. So in the system of subsidized housing, you have a lot of power. The interesting thing is that before the worldwide finance crisis, subsidized housing was really something the investors were looking for, because it was so cheap money. It was just 1% interest for 35 years, and you had, so this was really good. Then after the crisis, this money wasn't interesting anymore, because on the private market you could get it even cheaper, but you didn't get the land, because if the land is owned by the city, and this is why we have this Wohn for Wien, who is buying land for 35 years, then you only get access to the land by following the competition and the rules. So you don't need the 1% whatever anymore. In the moment, it will change again, but in the moment, but you need the land, and you need access to very cheap land, in fact, because the land price then is also very cheap. And this is why it's so important, the land ownership, and why we're really working on that, and why we also created this new zoning plan category, where you kind of force an investor if he wants to build houses, then he cannot just build houses for some stock markets. He has to build them for people who need them.
Just expand on that a bit, actually, because I think I was keen to go back to your active land policy, because it's really fascinating. I mean, the issue of land, I think, for us here in Australia is ultimately, the major stumbling block, and trying to find pieces of land that are affordable. But it appears to me that in your active land policy, you seem to widen the traditional perspective of spatial planning by considering further aspects, in particular property rights. So if I understand it correctly, you've got land policy. It's a kind of hybrid model. You've got land policy, new public management, which I was wanting to expand on a bit, and performance-based planning. It's how those three sections come together, if I understand it correctly.
Yes, they do. But in fact, when you look at the history of Vienna and also all the other main projects we're having, our main strategies, you could say, like a smart city strategy, it's coming from the history of Vienna that the social aspect is always very highly ranked. Even in the smart city, where it's very much about technology, but we don't have to care about technology. Everybody knows about it. It's just running, it's working. What we do not know is how do we implement it in society? How can we make sure that people understand what's happening? How is it not working against people's interests? And so this is a major just focus in all the strategies we're doing in Vienna. And this is also connected to the land policy in the end and to spatial planning.
Yeah. And I think, Kurt, if I'm right, I mean, a lot of this started in the 1980s when Vienna looked to, when you look to collaborate with the private sector to build affordable housing rather than developing and owning more public housing. Could you again expand on just really what happened in the 1980s? Because I understand back then they started to bring in the jury and evaluation process, and that's where your 4 pillars started to emerge as well in that period. Is that right? Yeah,
the 4 pillars are started 25 years ago, so 1990s, and the 4th pillar, the social sustainability, is only 10 years old. So it was 3 pillars in the beginning, and then it's developing. In the 1980s, Vienna was shrinking extremely, and we had 1.5 million at that time, 1987. Now we have close to 2 million again. So Vienna was growing a lot in the last years, especially. So in the 1980s, to buy land was easy because it was a shrinking situation. So there was some people who were thinking ahead and did well and used the opportunity of this time to buy a lot of land for the city. Also, sometimes to I wouldn't say to help others, but also to balance the economical situation in the city, because if a lot of people are leaving and it is going down, you also have to, as a city, catch up some situations. This also leads to buying land sometimes, which then you can invest again or just use again in a later time. And what we also did is that we did not fall completely into the neoliberal traps of selling everything. So many cities have sold their limited profit housing associations. And now they're coming to Vienna and look at what is our system and can we rebuild it again. And we know exactly if there was a political decision to cut this system, it would not be able to rebuild it. Or it's extremely hard because you need this long-term running process that's slowly rolling so that you can have reinvestment from the last 35 years to make sure you have a lot of money you can invest for new buildings and for renewables, for refurbishments. So that Vienna was lucky, and it also has to do with the political tradition in the city. That not like in Berlin where everything was sold, and now people really have a problem and talk about taking away the private ownership again, which is not possible.
And Kurt, I'm just going to turn to the questions again. There's one from Barclay here, who is interested in, I mean, you touched on this a bit in the presentation, the retrofit challenge. And I think you talked about this notion that if you were doing it again, decarbonisation would be a big issue. But the question in the chat here is, would you be able to expand on how IBA are engaged in these sorts of retrofitting projects? And are you approached by private owners, government, searching for existing housing stock to retrofit? I mean, how has that been dealt with now? Because I'm sure some of those incredible projects that we've seen from the Red Vienna days are coming to a point where they need investment and change. And how's that been handled?
Yeah, this is also a little different to many other cities, because this stock of housing was currently renovated over the decades. So you have a quite good technical situation of the houses, and also in terms of thermical situation. The problem is more energy now, energy supply. So if we change the whole gas heating system in the city, and this is a main topic for the Gründerzeit, Wilhelminian area, and also for some of the huge buildings after the war, erected after the war. And this is a real challenge, and something that's now worked on. How can we first in a house make sure that we have one system and not single gas heaters in every house, but combine them, and then you can, in the next step, maybe change the whole system for the house and take them off gas. But that's exactly what is now going on. It's not mainly a topic of IBA. There are some projects that are scratching on it, but as I said, we should have, if we would start now, this would be part of the main topics. It really has changed quite a lot in the last years, while IBA has already started.
And just as a follow-up to that, in terms of decarbonisation, I suppose to look at the construction industry, I'm curious whether IBA has actually helped to transform the construction industry. I mean, we're talking a lot about that here. We've got a competition process called Future Homes that we'll be discussing on Friday night. And one of the big aspects of that was to try and look for more opportunities for off-site manufacturing, which again leads into the decarbonisation of the construction industry conversation. Are we seeing any change? Are we seeing any radical shifts that are happening? And from an architectural perspective, is it driving any innovation in the way we're thinking about design and construction?
Yeah, definitely in terms of the timber construction, because when it was only with the cooperation with Vancouver that it made it possible to focus on a very small area. It's only 100 housing units to make this an experiment for the subsidized housing system in Vienna. And out of that, we could see there were so many teams applying in this competition, and we could see the very high level of quality they were bringing. So it was clear, okay, we have a stock of experts that are really being able to build it immediately, not just one, but a lot. And out of that, it was possible to roll out this new program of timber constructions that is now done in Vienna. At the same time, we know that the industry needs time to catch up with it and to see, okay, they're taking it for serious. We can know for sure this will be something that's worth to invest in and to change our production, maybe from single houses, which is now very much the case, into really large developments with a few hundred units.
Now, Kurt, I would be amiss if I didn't plug your book, which I think anyone who's watching should get a copy of. It's quite an incredible kind of atlas of projects, but there is so many incredible elements to it. And there's something, it's not a question, something that prompted me to think about in Australian context. I'll come back to in a second, but right at the very front of the book, it talks about the fact that nobody should be able to guess a person's social status or income level based on their home address. Yes. Now, this is something which I think probably comes fairly natural in the Viennese context, something we find very difficult here. And we're actually seeing a big shift now with the build-to-rent sector and some of the public house renewal projects. Major advances, I think, in how we're addressing social housing, but what we call tenure blind is challenging. You managed to do that effectively. You talk about the fact that this is it's in many respects backed up by research that proves that this is the right way to do it. Many people describe it as peppering different income streams throughout a development. But it'd be really great to hear again a bit more about how you deal with social housing, which is not just built for the low paid or unemployed or the socially disadvantaged. And you touched on this, I think, at the early part of the conversation. So really the question there, Kurt, is, how do we, is there research there that proves that this notion of tenure blind is the right way to go?
Yeah, but that's also one reason why IBA makes sense even in a topic where a city is strong, because to reach this level, it's constantly necessary to move further and to not rest and be satisfied with the situations, because the outer influences are changing so quickly. So it's always necessary to find something better, and there is people coming with complaints, and you can look at this and say, okay, we didn't see that aspect up to now, so what could we do about it? Because yeah.
Now, one of the things reading through the book that really prompted me to think about something we don't often discuss in the context of social housing, or certainly the rented marketplace, is the role of marketing. And there was a whole section in the book about housing as an investment product, where it talked about the financialization is visible in urban space. Now, I thought it was an incredible piece of writing, because you don't really think about, any magazine you pick up, any newspaper, online adverts, billboards, all across Melbourne, we are confronted with marketing campaigns to sell houses, to buy, encouraging you to buy. We never see advertisements celebrating rental accommodation or social housing. And it's a fascinating kind of wake-up call, I think, just to, you become so used to it, I think. What role does marketing, do you think, play in all of this?
But it's extremely important not to just look at the rental aspect, but also on the on a safe rental situations. So these subsidized housing rentals are not limited in time. You have a contract that's not limited. That's extremely important. So if somebody says, okay, I'm going into a rental situation, then you have to be sure that it's not just after 3 years you get kicked out, or you have to sign a new contract that's maybe 20% higher. And because this would lead to ownership, then you say, okay, then I know what I have, and I can make my own management concept about this. How do I work with it? So that's very important, that you have safe conditions. which means the height of the rent. It can get higher, but also with the index, only with the index, and not just because somebody has an idea of getting more income. It's with the index, or in the case of renovation, for a limited time, you might contribute a little to the renovation. But otherwise, it's safe. And you know, this is the conditions I am getting this flat, and I can be sure if I stay there for 15 years, it will be the same conditions. Just going with the index.
Yeah.
And then you can have a lot of rental stock because it's a safe situation.
And one of the things, just again picking up on a point in your presentation, is that my understanding is that tenants' incomes are not continuously assessed in Vienna. So pay progression throughout a resident's career does not jeopardise their right to remain in public housing. Is that an accurate depiction of what?
I'm sorry, I did not quite understand it.
So someone's pay progression, if someone moves into social housing, subsidized housing, if their status changes and their income changes, it's my understanding that Vienna does not continuously assess.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true, and that is an ongoing discussion. Because on one hand, of course, once you are in the system. And like in Switzerland, they're much stricter and say, if you're earning too much then because you are successful in your job or whatever, so it's good, good luck, but then you are not allowed to stay in this subsidized house anymore. So there are different ideas about it, but it's the political situation is that they don't want to change that now. The discussions are going into, oh, you could then pay more, stay in your flat, that's nice. Why should you change to the flat? But you could pay more and contribute more so that others have the chance again. So this discussion is going on, but it's not solved, and it's going on since a long time.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to wrap things up with one last question for you, Kurt. So, I mean, as you're aware, Kurt, we've had correspondence over the last couple of years about aspirations we have in Melbourne to look at the role of an IBA and use it as a way of, government, industry, practitioners and the universities all collectively working together in the same pursuit. Could you say very simply, if you were kind of advocating for it to government here in Australia, the benefits of the IBA now reflecting back over the last 5 years?
Well, I think the benefit is that you really can open a door for a limited time, which is important. And within this time, allow not only ideas, but also implementations of these ideas so that you have a chance to learn from them. This is really a great opportunity, and sometimes it is even good to think about regulations, which kind of regulations, they are not good, but you don't know how to make them better. Maybe open a situation for a limited time and say, oh, let's find out by doing it what could be better. And then close it again. It's very important. Close it again and look at it so that it's not becoming a habit. And if administration and politics are really wanting that, not just wanting the IBA label and the result, which is also nice in the end, but you have to want the process as well and the uncomfortabilities that might come with it. Then it's really the best thing you can do, because you have such a chance to learn. If it has to be IBA or something else, then this is not so important. It's more the creating an environment where all these vivid and lively spirits you have in every city have a chance to bring in what they are able to contribute.
Fantastic. Well, look, Kurt, I will definitely take you up on your invitation. Now that international travel has lifted, I have not missed landing in Dubai, but I will certainly make it a priority to get to Vienna next year with international travel opening up. I think it's an incredible journey that you've taken us on, looking at the history of Vienna, but importantly seeing the role and impact that Ipa can play. I think importantly, you did mention Harry Seidler in your presentation. As a young 17-year-old walking the streets of Vienna, he saw a particular building, the first high-rise residential block to be built in the city, and it provoked him to seek out a career in architecture. Importantly, there is another 35 Viennese immigrants who landed here in Melbourne. We've been doing a lot of work and research around them. Architects, artists, designers, dancers, photographers. And we have a grand plan to bring that group back to Vienna at some point. Also with the Adolf Loos interior, which is in the National Gallery here in Victoria, and the Hoffman interior. We've got two really important interiors, fully intact, sitting in our National Gallery. And wow. we would love to somehow bring this back, whether it's physically or virtually. We would love to bring it back to Vienna and celebrate the work and the impact they had here when they arrived just after 1938. So it's great to keep the dialogue with you. We love what's going on. We'll have opportunities over the next couple of days to talk more about this, I'm sure. And particularly on Friday, we'll be talking to the Office for the Victorian Government Architect about their future homes project. So huge thank you, Kurt. And
thank you.
We'll see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good luck with the Ipa in Melbourne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Kurt Hofstetter there for a really fascinating insight into what is possible when you put your mind to it, and Alan Pert leading a really fascinating conversation there as well. And we have had such an informative day for this first day of the Housing Assembly 2021. This afternoon we got a first-hand perspective of what secure housing really means to people. That's when Sarah told us about the boarding home she's been living in, mice, cockroaches, being frightened of other residents, hiding herself, and then the joy you could feel and see and hear in her voice about her new home, her forever home, modest as it sounds, 2 bedrooms with an ensuite and built-in robes. Her story is so powerful and represents everything that this conference is talking about. This was so much more than a roof over her head. It encompasses health, esteem, well-being, and so much more. We heard too about the social value toolkits that Flora Samuel is developing with architects in the United Kingdom to help develop and understand the emergent field of social value, as well as the triple bottom line of environmental, social and economic principles. Now, in the UK, some cities and municipalities are now insisting that social value be part of the procurement process. So lots to think about there. We heard of projects closer to home that are using a trauma-informed approach to design housing for women and children that also consider environmental and sustainable practices. And of course, the detailed presentation from Kurt about what he's calling a radical approach being taken in the city of Vienna, which builds social housing into new developments, mandates low rents, and is experimenting with different strategies that look at access to services, jobs, mobility, social connection, and so much more as part of neighbourhood development plans. And I suspect, just like Alan, there might be a few of us interested in taking Kurt's guided tour of all of those amazing projects that he was detailing to us, should we ever get back to Vienna. Now, don't forget, if you haven't been able to tune in live to all of today's sessions, the sessions have been recorded and they will be available on the event website. So you can catch up on those sessions that you might have missed, or even re-watch some sessions of interest. The live program resumes tomorrow morning at 10:45 a.m. and we begin to focus on human elements of housing. So lots of great discussions and lots of great speakers tomorrow as well. Thank you today to everybody for their fabulous engagement, the great questions, the comments in the chat, etc. We look forward to seeing you back online tomorrow night. Good night.